Just in general, Alaska miles are a lot more valuable than people think, and it's kind of more of like a hidden topic because not too many people like dive deep into the Alaska ecosystem necessarily. I've already seen like it's kind of like up in the air, like how long this little like kind of loophole is going to exist for. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was some sort of nerf to this little like loophole transfer at some point.
Okay, so I am considering transferring all 140,000 Amex points I have left to Hawaiian Airlines because of this new partnership that was just announced between Hawaiian and Alaska, where you could actually book with Alaskan miles a lot of different airlines out in the world for apparently way cheaper than most other airlines out there. And since I don't really know much about this, I enlisted the help of an expert on Alaska and all things travel, Mr. Matt Welter. How are you, sir?
Hey Anthony, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me on. Super excited to talk about Alaska and all things related to this partnership. So let's dive right into it.
Totally not the second take because I forgot to hit the recording button. Okay, so so thank you for your time, man. And so at the current moment, I hear a lot of different people talking about they want to get all their points over from Amex to Alaska, or I should say, everyone's trying to earn Alaskan miles. You've talked about this over
Mhm.
the years. A lot of people have talked about this. In fact, our very own Dugras Reports went all in on Alaska recently by transferring all of his 285,000 miles from Amex to Hawaiian. So this way, Hawaiian can now transfer to Alaska via this new partnership we saw recently. By the points guy here, they mentioned big news. You can now transfer Hawaiian miles and by extension Amex points to Alaskan Airlines. So what's the deal with Alaska? Why does everybody want to accumulate those points? What's the value in it?
Yeah, so to just take a step back really quick, just why this partnership is even a possibility, why you can now transfer over to Alaska in the first place. Essentially, Alaska and Hawaiian formed this partnership. So, since Hawaiian is technically a travel partner of American Express, you can then take your American Express points, transfer them to Hawaiian, and then from Hawaiian, transfer them over to Alaska. Alaska,
Mm,
especially, is not necessarily like a common transfer partner with a lot of points currencies out there. I think Built it's a travel partner with. I don't even know if there's many other opportunities. So Alaska, a lot of times the miles are valuable, but a lot of times it's hard to get points over into that ecosystem in the first place. So that's why
mm.
this is kind of the talk of the town. That's why this is, pretty important to know about, why there's a lot of opportunities here with transferring points over from American Express to Hawaiian to Alaska.
So that's pretty interesting, actually, because, well, I like I mentioned in the intro here, I was like, well, I have 140,000 miles, and I've been trying to figure out the best way to use that. I transferred some to Air France, but people are telling me that maybe there's a way to, transfer Max points, get the Alaskan miles, and then use that for maybe like, because I want to go to Japan, I want to go to Italy, and I guess I'm just asking everybody like, does that make sense to do? Like, should I take my Amex points, transfer it over to Alaska? Is there like a deal anywhere out there?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is Alaska is a part of the One World Alliance. So one of those
Mm,
airline alliances where basically you have all these different partners that are technically also part of the One World Alliance. So once you get your points over into the Alaska ecosystem, you can then take those miles and book a lot of these different, international airline partners, for example. So like you touched on going to Japan, Japan Airlines is a partner that's with Alaska where you can use your Alaska miles to book Japan Airlines flights.
hmm.
British Airways is another one. Iberia is another one. So multiple opportunities to get over to Europe by using your Alaska miles. I believe American Airlines is also another one. So for some of that domestic travel, you can touch that base as well.
Huh.
Just in general, Alaska miles are a lot more valuable than people think, and it's kind of more of like a hidden topic because not too many people like dive deep into the Alaska ecosystem necessarily. But there is a lot of potential opportunity, and a lot of that comes from how many miles you need to book certain things. So, for instance, Japan Airlines, if you book business class from Seattle or Vancouver to Japan, you can
Hmm.
get that for 60,000 miles in Japan Airlines business class using Alaska miles. And the reason for that is because of their distance based chart. Technically, Seattle to Tokyo is just under 5,000 miles and like the total flight time. So it qualifies for
Oh.
that 60,000 mile business class, which is a great opportunity.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I guess depending on how many miles you're flying,
Yeah.
it'll allow like they won't show certain award charts, so like points charts. Like it'll be like maybe 60K for under 5,000, over 5,000, like 80K or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. They
Hmm.
go based off of a distance chart. So technically, that's why a redemption specifically from like Seattle to Tokyo would especially be valuable. Another
Hmm.
thing with Alaska too is they offer free international stopovers. So if you wanted to hit a couple different places on your trip, you could basically have a stopover in Tokyo for free on your way to Singapore, for example. So like
Hmm.
there's opportunities there to hit multiple different cities in one itinerary, which is a benefit with Alaska as well.
I think that's really powerful for a lot of people to know. It's like it's not just getting the 1 mile ecosystem. It's like what are you actually a part of? Like you said, One World. If you have the Alaskan miles, you can book all those other ones. Like you said, British Avios,
Mhm.
Siberia, Japan Airlines. So that's pretty interesting. So you said 60K business class. So my 140K Amex points, if I transfer that to Hawaiian's
Mhm.
Alaskan, I technically could get my business class to Japan. You're saying like two people, me and my wife.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a great way to do it. And kind of to touch on your point too, like I feel like so many people aren't familiar with kind of like the sharing between travel partners. Cause like, let's say you wanted to fly on Emirates first class, for instance,
Hmm.
people would probably their first instinct be like, okay, well, I need to transfer my points to Emirates and book that way. But a lot of times that's not the most valuable way to do it because just the point valuations with Emirates aren't as good.
Hmm.
But if you like take one of their partners, like Aeroplan, for example, you can book that same flight for a lot cheaper. So
Wow.
that's why Alaska is a sweet spot because it's a good like yeah, you can use it to book Alaska flights if you want, but you also have all these other opportunities with all their partners that you can book flights with as well.
Gotcha. So if this is the case, how is availability, you think? Like when you're using your Alaska Miles to book these other different airlines, can you find like good award availability, like flights that you can actually book with points, or does it get a little hard sometimes, you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends. I haven't personally like
Hmm.
booked a Japan Airlines flight using Alaska Miles, for instance. So I don't know too much about that specific redemption, but
Mhm.
especially for like American flights domestically, like I would anticipate that would probably be pretty wide open.
Mm.
When you talk about availability for like maybe going business class to Japan Airlines or business class over to Iberia or something like that, that's where it would probably make sense to use some of those point searching tools like Seats.aero or something like
Mm.
that, just to make sure that you know what you're getting into, I guess, before you transfer points over. Um, I think an interesting point as well is because I don't necessarily have something specific in terms of a travel itinerary coming up. So, like going to
Mm.
Taiwan next year, I already have that flight covered with points.
Uh-huh.
So, like for Alaska, I'm like thinking about doing this maneuver to transfer to from Amex to Hawaiian and then to Alaska. But then the
Mm.
question is, do I do it speculatively? Because I don't have a redemption in mind, but
Mm.
I really value Alaska miles pretty heavily. Like, so then that brings up another argument. Like, if you don't have something specific, is it still worth it to do, or maybe not? I don't know. Obviously, up to each person's decision, but yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, because now that I'm hearing all of this Alaska talk, it makes me just kind of want to go like Dugra's, just all in on yeah. Because I'm
Jump
not
in
doing
Alaska.
anything else. Yeah, I'm not doing anything else with my 140,000 Amex points at the moment. I mean, something could come up. I think that's pretty interesting, and definitely, like you said, if you don't want to speculate, just find like a destination. For me, it's Japan. I would want to go on Seats.aero from my airport to that airport, and I guess I could scroll down the list, and it'll say if there's a particular airline. If I could see Japan Airlines, then I know like okay, that's available right now today, right? And I could transfer my
Yeah.
points over and I could book that. So I think that's pretty cool. So you've
Mhm.
had a lot of over the years in your videos on your channel, you've actually
Mhm.
talked about Alaska quite a bit. You have a few videos where you talk about the Alaskan Airlines credit card, which I do want to ask you
Mhm.
about in just a moment. But I wanted to ask
Mhm.
your personal experience with Alaska because I think you've flown it a
Yeah.
good amount. You've been talking about it for years. So what's your experience? How have you used them? Fly with them? All that.
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense for me, just someone living in the Seattle area. Alaska has a huge hub in Seattle. I think San Francisco
Mm,
is their other big hub, but it typically like it works out best for me when I'm traveling like domestically. So a lot of times, I have some friends who live in California, for example. So when I'm going on some of those shorter flights over from Seattle to SF or to San Diego or whatever, using Alaska has always been like my go-to, what I always
mhm,
end up doing. Another thing as well is you can upgrade. So, like if you have the Amex Platinum flight credit, for example, you can typically activate that credit if you wanted
mm,
to upgrade to like kind of the equivalent to Delta Comfort Plus. So I've done that a couple times through
mm.
Alaska. I don't have the Platinum card, but I've just done it just because I've wanted to. But yeah, no, I've had a great experience using Alaska Miles in general, using the credit card as well, and just in general flying on Alaska. I
Hmm.
had to. It became a clutch for me because I had a big fiasco during my honeymoon where like, all this stuff happened. Flight gets canceled, engine gets lit on fire, all this different stuff. Um, and eventually I like had to call Alaska customer service and like get everything rebooked and like get on a new itinerary and all this stuff. And they were able to help us out and get us booked to get
Oh.
over to our honeymoon. So ever since then, I've had a good things to say about Alaska. I've never had any issues with them for the most part either. Just in
Mhm.
terms of like losing bags or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, from a perspective of flying on Alaska using Alaska Miles, I haven't done like a major international redemption specifically with Alaska Miles, but
Hmm.
except for my honeymoon, I guess. But for the most part, it's worked out really well for me flying domestically. And I think Kevin Yang, who also lives in the Seattle area, I
Mhm.
want to say he's done some redemptions
Oh.
internationally with Alaska Miles too. But
Oh, good to know. Good to know. And I guess two things on that, because so you said so. I
yeah,
guess the customer service is pretty good. Like when you had
yeah,
that whole
I would say
fiasco
so.
of the engine
Yeah.
lighting on fire, like they were right on the phone and they were able to rebook you pretty
Mhm.
easily.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything common? Like, is there any like safety issues with Alaskan flights that you've heard of, or is that like the one and
Yeah.
only time that something's happened?
Yeah. Well, I think it was an Alaska flight where that like door fell off the plane
Oh,
on
that was a
the
oh no,
I'm
that was a
pretty
lift.
sure. Um,
Oh,
but I mean, it's more so probably the manufacturer than the airline, I would guess.
well, it's Boeing, right? That was the whole thing. It
Boeing,
was like,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Another thing that kind of like ties into the card as well is, I guess when you're asking about like my most use with Alaska, the most often that I use Alaska is for my companion pass, which plays into
Hmm,
like the value you get from the credit card. But
hmm,
essentially, I get a companion pass on my card member anniversary every year. And so I've used the companion pass to fly over to Hawaii with my wife to join my family for a family vacation over the past year.
hmm.
I've used it to fly from Seattle over to DC.
Oh wow.
Um, Essentially how the companion pass works is it basically takes that second person's flight, makes it $120 regardless of where you're flying. So, from
Oh.
Seattle, if I have this flight that's going to be like, $400 or more, typically it makes more sense to use that companion pass, save myself like $300, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
there's like flights from Seattle specifically over to Costa Rica, to Belize, and some like international
Hmm.
destinations. So I've thought about definitely trying to use the companion pass for that purpose too.
That's interesting. So you said the companion pass, like it, no matter what ticket you buy, it has to be cash, kind of like Delta's companion.
So the first ticket, yeah, you have to buy it with cash, and then the second you use that companion fare, and then whatever the price is. So if it's like $600 flight, whatever it is 120 for the second person. So it's
Ah,
basically like taking the difference between those two is how much value you're going to get.
interesting. So always 120. That's good to know. Actually,
Mhm.
to dive a little deeper,
Yeah.
I did want to actually look at the credit cards themselves because, like we said, Matt Welter, check out his channel, amazing stuff.
Mhm.
You talked about the Alaskan Airlines credit card. I guess it's this one right here. So I actually
Yep.
wanted to ask about the. I guess this is the personal version, and then you have the business
Mhm.
version of the Alaskan Mile. Do you think these cards are kind of worth having? Maybe long term, or what's the main like value in having them? You think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth it for me. There's a big caveat there because essentially the companion pass
Mm.
used to be where there was no spend that was required to get it.
Oh.
So I got the Alaska card before that. So I'm
Mm.
grandfathered into just getting the companion pass every year for zero spending.
Wow.
However, now I can't remember the specific number, but I want to say it's like 3 or 4K per year that you need to spend on the card to actually get that companion pass. So my recommendation there would be like, okay, if you're spending, let's say you're getting, whatever value you're getting, but let's say you're getting like $500 in value from the companion pass, take that with like the 3K spend, figure out what your return on spend is from
Mm.
those two numbers, and then figure out whether that it's worth it to spend to get the companion pass. So in
Makes
some
sense.
cases, yes, I think it could be worth it. I think it just depends on how much value you're getting from the companion pass every year.
Mm.
Um, if you're like considering whether you want to hold it or cancel it and you've got the Elastic card before these changes happened, then I think you absolutely should keep it because
Right.
if you're like me, I don't have to do any spend and I'm getting hundreds of dollars in value from the companion pass every year. So it's definitely a long-term keeper for me.
In before the good for you. Good for you, Matt. So the business card also comes with its own companion fare benefit. Wait a second, $70 for the company and 25 for the card. Is
That is
that
like
just
one
a
of the
95?
weirdest worded annual fees ever.
So you pay $70 to Alaska, and then you pay 25 to get the card in hand. Maybe. What if I just don't want the card in
Huh.
hand? Maybe I don't want it.
Yeah.
That's funny. Wow, is that just the better way to say, oh, it's 95 annual fee?
Makes you seem like you're getting like a better deal or something.
Yeah, wow. And I actually saw there's some interesting use cases here. So like they mentioned like 2 miles for every dollar spent on gas EV charging stations.
Mhm,
Maybe I could use that. You get $100 off an Alaskan lounge. I didn't even know they had lounges. What's the deal?
mhm.
You have an experience with the lounges?
I've never actually been in one. I see them all the
Hmm.
time and I always wanna go in, but there's no, like, card or anything that gets you, and it's not like if you book first class Alaska that you automatically get in. Like, every time you
Hmm.
wanna go in, you have to pay.
Hmm.
So, that's been the biggest drawback for myself on wanting to go in, but, I mean, if you're someone who, let's say you're, a business professional, you travel all the time, you typically fly Alaska, like, you would get value out of the lounge membership, then, and you're paying for it already, let's say, then I mean $100 off is canceling out the annual fee right there by
Hmm.
just getting that discount on the lounge membership. So in
Yeah.
that case, I could see that benefit being in handy. I don't think it's probably applicable to most people, but for
Hmm.
that like niche set of people, it could be worth it.
Gotcha. And you think for someone like me who is maybe just trying to get in and out a little bit, you think you would
Yeah.
recommend like just get the card, get the welcome offer, reevaluate in a year, maybe?
I think so. I mean, at the very minimum, 60,000 Alaska miles can get you pretty far. I mean, it can get you that Japan Airlines business class flight
Right.
if you flew out of Seattle. So I think, yeah, I mean, my perspective in general is that every single credit card is worth it for the most part for year one, just
True.
because, as long as you're trying to accumulate the points, Alaska points in particular are valuable. You could just try it out maybe for a year since you're already going to be spending towards the welcome bonus anyways. You'll probably meet the spend requirement for the companion pass too.
Hmm.
And then you could see like, hey, like let me try out the companion pass. Let's see what sort of value I'm getting and see if, maybe you end up getting a lot more value than the fee and you feel like it's worth it, then it could be worth it too.
Amidst all this too, I saw there was a
Uh,
Hawaiian Airlines credit card. I think you had it maybe on in a video once, um,
yes.
not too long ago. Is this something you think people should consider if they are trying to do the same thing and just get these Hawaiian airline miles and then again transfer it over to Alaska and then you get all the value? You think this is kind of worth it
Right.
in some?
Yeah, I mean, to start with, it's basically a better welcome bonus than the Alaska card because essentially the 70,000 Hawaiian miles are basically 70,000 Alaska miles if you want to go
Mm,
that route because you can just transfer them over. The reason I had that specifically in the video I talked about was I was going over the best welcome offers. There's a way to
mm.
actually get this specific offer without the spend requirement. So you can get
Oh,
it for
really?
making one purchase on the card, wipe out the $2,000 spend requirement. Essentially, you need to go to, I think it's like getmyhawaiiancard.com. It's like a
Hmm.
separate website. And then you have to type in a voucher code, but you can find those
Oh.
voucher codes all over Reddit, all over the internet. And essentially, they hand them out on Hawaiian Airlines flights. So people
Oh.
get them, and it's like not like a one-time use thing. They just post them online, and you can just find them anywhere. But
Hmm.
essentially, go to getmyhawaiiancard.com, type in the voucher code, and you can get those 70,000 Hawaiian miles with no spend. I think it's just like make one purchase on the card. So it's basically just a free
Wow.
70,000 miles.
Damn. Do you ever think that with this, because now people are talking about it's powerful, do you think this ever could go the way of Turkish? I remember there was a thing, I think Luke was talking about it, or a few other people in the Discord. They were like, oh, we got devalued because everyone was trying to get Capital One miles so they can transfer it to Turkish. And then, like, oh, that's a
Mhm.
great sweet spot. Do you think that could happen with Alaska now that everyone's like kind of talking about the miles being powerful?
Yeah, not to pull a sales move and be like, "Oh, you got limited time," but it is true.
Hmm.
Like I've already seen like it's kind of like up in the air like how long this little like kind of loophole is going to exist for.
Hmm.
Maybe it exists forever, that'd be great, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of closure to it as well to where like
Damn.
you can no longer transfer from Hawaiian to Alaska because they know that everyone's just transferring over from Amex.
Yeah.
Um or something. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was some sort of nerf to this little like loophole transfer at some point.
So I guess like anything else in this game, like I always like to say, make hay while the sun's shining. So I think
Yeah.
that's what I'm probably going to do. We'll see. But I
Yeah.
want to say, go check out Mount Welter's channel. He's got a lot of amazing videos, a lot of unique takes on a lot of different things, and you have some unique strategies as well relating to like hotel cards and a lot of big things coming up. So thank you so much for your time, Matt. I appreciate you educating me on this topic as I try to figure out how to become more of a world traveler. So thank you for that. And on behalf of everybody for your knowledge today, man. Thank you.
Of course, Anthony. Yeah, really happy to be here. Loved this conversation. So thank you for having me.